we can speak a lot about IP rights, and it's becoming an economic resource to manage the rights. IP rights means to earn money. Economy without IP right works in art, works in culture. It doesn't work in art, doesn't work in culture. It doesn't work in technologies. And to build new technology, regional economy. And this time we are holding the forum in Kaliningrad, a region. And it's important to have a successful economy without forming human capital, creating labor which can achieve results, able to commercialize results, human resources which sees good prospects. And we are talking also about engineers, researchers, technological business people, and all of them need to be able to use IP rights to be able to work on the regional and on the national and on the international markets. Those who don't enter the international markets are doomed to disaster. Even in Russia, where we have 146 million people living, even Eurasian market will not be able to pay for the investments in innovations, in technologies. What's necessary is to have at last 500 million population. That's why we are going to talk about IP rights and human resources in the regional context, and the co-organizer is the Kaliningrad regional government. And the governor earlier today, in a great detail, during the press conference and at a plenary session, explained why it is necessary to work with IP rights and human resources. And I would like to pass the floor to the Deputy Governor, Gary Goldman.
Thank you, colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for coming, that you have expressed interest in our forum. We have had this forum for the second time. Hopefully, it will be held on a regular basis, and we will be able to extend the coverage, the geographic coverage. First of all, I would like to say that the Kaliningrad region is like a test paper showing what's going on in the Russian economy. Our region is quite specific. It has no too many macro companies or big mining companies, but we have quite an interesting geopolitical situation. We have some logistical constraints, and to develop IT and intellectual property can be a decisive factor for our economy. For that reason, the Kaliningrad regional government is taking every effort in the economic area, in terms of taxation, in terms of providing benefits to potential employees from other regions. We keep involving new professionals from other areas. It's a priority objective for us to address human resource topics, and in order to provide the basis and the necessary prerequisites for the development of our Kaliningrad region. For that reason, all sort of support that we are working on at the moment and the links and relationships with university and research institutions that we have promoted for many years Now we are at a stage when all of these activities should provide an impetus, and we invite all potential stakeholders to take part in negotiations in those who are focusing on experts to come to Kaliningrad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. In my opinion, if we look at the situation in Kaliningrad, it is fairly specific. There are no natural resources, and the economy of the region has been developing in waves. There were several waves. There was a stage when fisheries sector was developed, and here we have people representing that sector. The fisheries complex was started by involving qualified labor. The critical mass of human resources was formed, and that was the beginning. And after that, there were no more such cases in modern Russia when a sector was developed from zero. The economy of Kaliningrad was developed within the special economic zone legal framework, and now it's the third reincarnation. And the first stage was about import duties-free imports, which resulted in assembling industries. That was the first wave. Thanks to benefits, active people could develop something, not being oriented at using human resources. The second wave was when residents to become a resident, investments were needed. Large-scale companies came, but it didn't result in new specialization of economy. There was a certain soil, a certain framework. Investors came, and now it's the third stage, and the threshold for the investors was drawn down. And what kind of companies should this be? IT companies, healthcare companies. If we follow the same chaotic way with regard to specialities, what the results will be? What we need is a mechanism to be used in the Kaliningrad region that would allow to educate people, to invite people, concentrating on focusing on certain technologies. My first question is, what are the sectors that will be focal points to lead local businesses to the international market?
Of course, the region does see it, but as far as the market study is concerned and what efforts need to be taken to promote our development, we are at a stage when new proposals are coming up. Mainly, the biggest driver for IT companies to come here is our taxation conditions and the special economic zone, because it's now we are in a situation when you need to invest 1 million rubles and you can become a special economic zone resident. Then we can speak about healthcare services. We can say that our geographical location is quite favorable. That means you can export in the EU. And thirdly, we can speak about IT and programming, robots and engineering solutions. Engineering enjoys support. We have this so-called concept production localization, which is being actively developed. We are putting major focus on those. Regarding external markets, if we look at around Kaliningrad, so we can say that the population around Kaliningrad is 1.5 billion people. Then we can speak about healthcare, foodstuffs, and domestic services, household services. That's more or less what our governor was talking about today. Do you mean these when you have mentioned priorities? Of course. In the power sector, we are not doing so well, but we can speak about green technologies and renewable sources. So we can say that the Kaliningrad regional government knows and identifies priorities, meaning that highly intellectual sectors will be of the highest priority. Now I would like to give the floor to a representative from the Immanuel Kant Baltic Federal University. So we have the Russian Federal Law 216. It's about the legal framework, which might be similar to that used in the Skolkovo project, because it identifies major projects. I think we know them. For that we need interested companies who are given access to the local market, and then we need universities and research institutions. So how business can benefit from that research?
Colleagues, in the first place, I would like to apologize for being unable to participate in the discussion. I am the lead speaker in the neighboring conference hall. I will not take a lot of your time. I'll be very brief, responding to the questions of Sergey. And though it's against my rules, but to save time, I will use my notes. We are talking about the development of intellectual potential. What does it have to do with the Research and Technological Center? We believe it's the most promising instrument. We should lead to creating a catalyzer. A catalyzer for further development. As Sergey said, it all was created in 2017 by the Federal Law number 2016. When we speak about scientific and technological centers, we are talking about Silicon Valleys. And now I will articulate three major benefits from having these centers. The first one benefit is the possibility to create technical regulations, sanitary and epidemiological rules, a simplified way of conducting educational and healthcare activities. This is the first part, and this is all closely linked to conditions of the special economic zone. Point number 2. Support of the center on the part of the government, ability to assign land with certain regulations. It includes simplified decision-making for construction, advertising, involvement of international experts. This is very topical these days. And thirdly, it's a possibility. It means a possibility to create on the territory of such a center social infrastructure, including housing for staff. I will not elaborate on why it is important. This is not that's needed for catalyzing, but this is the core. The interest on the part of the interest about creating such a center. And last year there were 4 applicants, Kaliningrad, Moscow, Sochi, and Tula. And now there are 4 more. Kaluga, Far East, Vladivostok, Ryazan, and Tambov. What does it mean? It's only the beginning of the year, but it's a doubled number of applicants. We started our work with the support of the Kaliningrad regional government when we developed an application and a package of documents, which is quite a complicated task to fulfill, because to get all the permits, we need to coordinate everything with the Kaliningrad regional government. And my task is to reassure you that this is what is needed to do and be active. Sergey mentioned about 3 main fields of activities for regional economy. Human-centered technologies. Human technologies. And there are 3 fields of activities. And I can talk a lot about each, but I will be brief. Food and biotechnologies, increasing synthesis of nutrients. Second, health protection, biomedical technologies, including DNA diagnosing, forecasting of possible diseases, all kinds of medical activities, high-tech medical activities, which we are trying to develop since a few years ago. And the third one is about household applications in home design using optics, lasers of all kinds, smart solutions for daily life. And here we are talking not only about the Baltic Federal University, but also other actors. And the core topic for the 3 fields, and here we cooperate with the Kaliningrad Technical University, automated systems of management, cross-cutting technologies. I've already mentioned that I am going to leave to the neighboring conference hall if the chairperson lets me go. Opening an office, an engineering office, IP of the IP Center. It means creation of 3 programs, and one of them is our core program, and the center, the IBB, can be our partner. And the priorities develop from the interests of business community of Kaliningrad. It's also due to the scientific capacity we have and the possibility to commercialize scientific research results. And these ideas have been supported by a number of ministers and highly reputed national organizations. There will be a discussion taking place, including the business community. And we need to understand that the concrete work in the field, within these 3 fields, will be a certain improvisation before final decisions are made, and the business community should be involved. And a few words about infrastructure, and we are talking now about 10 hectares on which it is planned to build. And here there is no improvisation. 3 research and laboratory buildings, the food center, practical and rehabilitation center. Number 3, business infrastructure, hotels, business centers. Number 4, and finally, an educational center. And land will be assigned for small production companies. The estimates for the investments is about 13 billion rubles, and the majority will be funded from the budget. I'm coming to the end of my presentation. The potential participants are industrial partners, as far as I know. colleagues from the government. Business people, regional business people, and we will involve also Russian companies to create this scientific and technological center. International experts can be also involved, and we are working with Skolkovo, with the Strategic Initiatives Agency and others, and we can see interest on the part of both small technological companies and also Rus tech companies. And the participation can be as follows. Firstly, creation of their own laboratories for conducting their own research, as well as for leasing those laboratories to others. Second, developing the working based on the orders of the Scientific and Technological Center. The participants of the center will be our partners, and land will be reserved within the center to satisfy interests of the participants. New products, so another thing that will be introduced, a simplified and accelerated procedure for getting certificates. And thirdly, a possibility to buy part of the equipment of the managing company. These are the three main benefits, and there will be also others. Let me finalize here. And the conclusion is that firstly, I would like to thank the organizers. I would like to thank for the possibility to speak. I apologize for missing the discussion, and I hope that what I have said was of interest and will be further developed in practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you would like to say something? I think from the point of view of the operation of the real economy, the idea behind the Scientific and Technology Center is that the technology which is within its boundaries, the standard technical regulations cannot be applied, and the same concerns the healthcare technology, because everything is governed by the local rules. In that case, in the premises of the Scientific and Technology Center, we can test all possible things. The companies involved, which try to set up experimental production, as an output, they obtain not only some products, but also some new regulations, some new rules, which can be extended all over Russia and open new markets for them to transfer technologies. How this mechanism is going to work in with regard to the Research and Development Center, then probably we will give the floor to Mr. Shapitzo. The Technology Transfer Association was created within the Moscow University, and it was the Moscow State University which was an initiator of this Federal Law 216. It was decided that it can be used as a tool in a number of regions. And regarding technology transfer and the operation of business universities, maybe Yegor will tell us something. Thank you. I will continue what the previous speaker has said, but from my point of view, I can see many partners and colleagues involved in technology transfer. I can express my point of view. It's been said that the goal of the association is to promote infrastructure development for technology transfer in Russia. That means our university technologies, the portfolio, and implementation of those in real economy. So, and the Research and Development Center is responsible for doing that job. When we spoke about the infrastructure promotion for the research sector, it also provides for communication between the stakeholders. There is nothing better than summing up the achieved outputs, no matter what we are talking about, whether it's about digital economy or anything else. Our association thought how we could help. We have reviewed the experience of other countries in cooperation with the Ministry of Economic Development, and we have analyzed the best practices, and their success has provided the basis for our activities. We have rated various countries in terms of their success, and we have collected a pile of books that you can see over there with the corresponding knowledge. As we see it, research and development centers will continue to be established, and we can say that those centers will promote, let's call it, heart beating. It's been mentioned already that there are several regions, and we cannot say that we can directly implement the Moscow experience in Kaliningrad or in any other way, because different regions have different conditions. Some universities promote initiatives, but it depends on the structure of each particular case. We cannot say that we have a unique mechanism which can be applied everywhere. So there is no single formula. I think the pioneer regions will face most difficulties, but they are to demonstrate how we can go forward. I think that R&D centers can serve as key platforms to borrow the maximum advantage from them. Can you give us any examples of successful cooperation between universities and others? How it normally happens, businesses order from research institutes, and then everything seems to be all right. But as I understand, to promote technology transfers, universities need to work in a different way. At the output stage, they collectively should set goals. It's about a kind of partnership. I know you have experience in dealing with other regions when new products were generated, new solutions came up. When we speak about R&D centers, how these cooperations should be promoted, this cooperation should be on a regular basis. That means sitting and spending time in the same places. Speaking about some previous successful experiences, I can give you an example of one of my previous conferences. I called a person representing the Tomsk subsidiary. What did we have last year? we sold a license worth 2.5 Swiss francs to the Tomsk State University, in the name of the Tomsk State University. Perhaps it's not the scale that we are willing to achieve, but anyway, it can be used as a good example. But what was the concept? What was the idea? It was Meteor codec. It's to compress video images. That means it shouldn't be a discrepancy between the research ideas and business concepts. We need to build up a chain to link all the players. It's nothing but live communication between people. It's a platform where businesses interact with other partners. Then we can have a better outcome. Regarding this cooperation, I'll have a question that we can address to Mr. Andrei Spelenka, who is very experienced from the Clusters and Technoparks Association. I thought that industrial clusters mean when everybody is in one area and they work together, but an industrial cluster is a network model when it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is accumulated in one area.
Thank you, Sergey. In the beginning, I would like to say that for me, the forum started this morning on our way in a car, and I had a driver, and he asked me, what's happening in Moscow? What's about politics? Where are we moving to? And he started saying, we are involved in equipment. We buy spare parts in Germany. And there are barriers created, and we sometimes have no equipment necessary. And here we have craftsmen making spare parts, and it works. And I want to say that the keyword is market, and our task is to create products which can compete. If you allow me, I will also make a comment and then answer your question. Colleagues, let's be honest. In reality, in the Russian Federation, territories with special tax regime, with preferential regime, are in a great number. And you need to remember Kaliningrad and Sakhalin Island and other subjects of the Russian Federation with regard to support mechanisms are absolutely identical, plus minus. One region has sea closer to it, another one has taiga closer, but the mechanisms, industrial parks, special economic zones, other modes, scientific and research valleys are the same. We have an order from the president, and we are developing a federal law about a single instrument for territorial development. Why I'm saying this? In the near future, so the amount, the government's proposals for benefits will depend on the amount of investments. And this mess will, sooner or later, will be more clear, and the mechanism will start working. So the amount of benefits will depend on how much I invest, irrespective of where I am. What does it mean? It means that we need to show not the number of new grounds with various support measures, starting from an ideal regime, regulation. Soon there will be a federal law about the status of Skolkovo assigning it to other territories. Can you imagine what kind of mess it will start among investors and business people when it all starts working? It's not the most important thing, the availability of a certain infrastructure or the zone with a special tax regime. It's not the most important thing for the business, this or that mechanism. For business, it's important to be able to answer the question where to invest money and who will buy the product. And here we are facing the biggest dilemma. I regret that the vice rector left. Being the chairperson of Sorov Techno-Nuclear Park, our task was to commercialize technologies, and what life showed was that when super innovative projects can be unnecessary, and transfer centers and other mechanisms will not work until business says, I need this thing, period. It's enough to create something which is not in demand. Colleagues, I believe we have a very important topic for our roundtable using of IP. And here we have all kinds of celebrities, key persons being present. And I would like to show you the direction to go. Biotechnologies will not be developed in the Kaliningrad region because there are no consumers, but shipbuilding, car building, amber cluster, number 3. And maybe we should look first. I'm sure that you have discussed it. I'm 100% sure that you have discussed it, but maybe you need a hint about the place of intellectual property. Sergey said that he learned that the industrial cluster is not a group of companies but a chain. I'm sure that you know that an industrial cluster, and it's described in a federal law. They are very similar to territorial and production complexes, which they had in the Soviet Union. One company creates the raw material, and then there is a network leading to the final product. What practice did show? Practice showed that business investors, including research developments, they need concrete orders. And apologies on my part, I'm a practitioner, and I'm saying that when we start from scratch inventing innovations, in 99% they die. And being the person who have been doing it half of my life, I am getting nervous when they say, we will build another laboratory, we will do this, we will do that. I am getting really nervous. Let's stop dreaming. Let's take your chain, shipbuilding, car building, and amber cluster. Let's develop this chain, and we will see that it all is full of holes, gaps. When the final consumer starts driving a car, he doesn't understand that plastic was imported, paint was imported, components were imported, and so on and so forth. Consumers don't care, but this is the thorough analysis which allows to fill in investment niches. And the cooperation of the Kaliningrad region should say, dear scientists, investors, we have 150 investment gaps. We need paint. We need new types of plastic. We need this and that. And here the most interesting thing starts developing. Many can say, why should we produce paint when we can buy it in Germany? Buy it there, but we have sanctions. But this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that, firstly, the cost of products develops, final cost develops also based on cost of imported goods. And here we can apply our IP capacity when we know the niches, investment niches, we know who buys. I am a company importing something. I bring goods here, add something, added value, added value, and then create a different product. Industrial clusters, they allow you to fill in investment niches. When you know a volume of consumed products, you can buy something abroad, or you can use developments, local developments. And of course, you should know what's worth doing. And when the government invests in new technologies, for it to be cheaper, maybe simpler in production, and better in quality. The first important thing to remember when we create such industrial chains, before an investor invests, he should know, he should work with professionals and get information about how this or that technology is competitive. If you invest only in a technology which is protected in Russia, then you take a risk that in future you may know that it is protected in America, and then your market will be limited by Russia. It's a long talk. I am wrapping up. The main idea is that none, and now I am not pointing to anyone, not the Moscow University or others, because there are very many examples among technoparks established by the law, when the government covers costs to create engineering centers, laboratories, and so on and so forth. But this is not what I want to say. Before such research valleys, technoparks, are the educational institutions, research and development centers, which are being developed these days. Before they when they apply for competitions, before they refer their programs to a specific business, we are doomed to ineffective use of federal money. And none of our attempts with regard to IP will result in anything. They will be next to zero. This is my expert opinion addressed to you colleagues, to the regional government representatives. In order to increase investment attractiveness, you need to analyze the existing chains and then to apply to such experts as Sergei and his association in order to understand what's available, what technologies are available, what intellectual property is available, and to identify how it can be used, and then invite investors, and together with scientific valleys, to conduct research in the interests of a specific business. Then we will have good results. Otherwise, since 20 years ago, we will be developing innovations. And everything was lost in sand, though we have created a lot of innovation infrastructure objects. And I do support these developments, including the Skolkovo Center, but I hope that science will start working with business more closely.
Thank you, Andrei. Since you have mentioned Skolkovo, that means we shouldn't dream. We should take businesses, universities, analyze chains, and take out some uncovered holes and identify the niches. And with all this, we should go to investors. So for that, we don't need any R&D center. We can do it even yesterday. There is an alternative model in Skolkovo mentioned by you. Some companies go there for a reason. On the other hand, new startup companies And maybe Mr. Prosh from Skolkovo will give us an explanation. Thank you. So I have just come back from a parallel session. I couldn't attend your session from the beginning, but now I'm going to present you a couple of facts. The Skolkovo Foundation has been developed since 2010. At first, a respective law was adopted, then the infrastructure developed. Now in Skolkovo, around 2,000 startup companies are operated. Doesn't mean a lot or not so many. If we speak about the rate of new companies coming to us, then we can say this figure can be about between 3,000 and 4,000. But we need quality and not quantity. Why are they coming? Believe me, they are not coming for money, or not only for money. They need helping. They need some help. They need communication with real business. They don't know where to find co-investors, co-thinkers, or business angels with whom they go through the Death Valley and accomplish a ready-made project. Yes, there are some supporting measures. Some subsidies are granted, some tax benefits, but I think that they are not coming for that. A comfortable environment and the potential for you to develop your project, starting from an idea up to the commercialization stage. They come to us at various stages. If there is a ready-made formula how to support such players, then it can be very effective. The second part of our community is about so-called industrial partners. What they do, they build centers, and not only. The main activity, so why they come? They come seeking for startup companies because they are going to implement some originally developed ideas in their production facilities. In most cases, you will have to follow up and to add something to those concepts, but startup companies are ready for that. And it's important for them to get a hint from businesses what businesses expect from them. You should realize that there can be different programs or whatever. Big businesses can be a source of competencies. They know in which direction business is going to be developed. They may not exactly know what technological solutions are required, but at least they have a concept in mind and they are ready to implement potential projects. As far as the dissemination of the Skolkovo mandate is concerned, so we need to see how a project can be promoted. I think this story of the isolated territory doesn't work anymore, because people move through territories But if when you are in a country with the same jurisdiction, then it's not reasonable to limit anything with a single territory. A city is developing, new competitive products are coming up, and it's about high-tech competitive products, and that's what we need to promote, that we can export. So a recipe from Skolkovo, it's not about universities or reservation of land. It's about bringing a high number of startup companies, enjoying all sorts of privileges there. At the same time, when you use these startup, you also engage business sharks.
Есть интересные решения.
So some of those companies have their own history, but what big businesses do in order to fill their demand, they are prepared for high-tech solutions, because when you do anything from scratch, it's more expensive. In Kaliningrad, it's like this. You need to have a strong partner, either inside the region or from externally. There should be several startup companies which think what they can do about recipes, and when they are all together, then they can do something. Yes, then we can say that it's a mature sector. 3 major companies and between 20 and 30 startup companies. Yes, it can be inside a university. Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to a representative from another friendly region who has named itself the capital of innovations.
Irina, you've declared yourself as the inventions region. We participated in a competition last year, and on the 29th, we were announced the winner, with the right of conducting a number of regional, interregional, and federal events on inventions. But you don't plan to have an R&D center. Why not? Do you compete with Kaliningrad? We are not competitors. We will be partners. I would like to share our experience of creating the ecosystem, innovation ecosystem based on technological entrepreneurship. This is our instrument to develop human capital, human resources, to accelerate technological development. We've identified a practical instrument to transform economy from industrial model, when a major role is played to the model where the main role is played by developing SMEs focused on exports. And for that purpose, we need to develop, to accelerate technological development, to increase its speed, to increase human capital, and develop the ecosystem of technological entrepreneurship. We are fulfilling these tasks through projects, 3 projects. And the key project is Techno Campus, and it's about concentrating within a relatively small area, research, educational, business, and production resources, which interact with a synergy effect as the main elements of the system. And is it possible for me to use a PowerPoint presentation? The main elements of the Techno Campus project are the ecosystem of technological entrepreneurship represented by a high-tech park, inter-university technologies transfer center, pilot production, and technological companies. The second element of this project is an educational complex, which includes a unique program, a techno-campus school, children's quantorium, scientific youth centers, technological college, and a combined university campus. The third element is about research and development by private and public laboratories, and also research and development centers of national and international corporations. It's a unique way of combining various actors in one architectural space within about 30,000 square meters. And among the industries are smart technologies, new materials, and so on and so forth. And everything is closely related to IT, innovation technologies, which illustrates the specialization of this center. And this project is considered by the government as an example for copying in any other region of Russia. The Techno Campus project is implemented through a number of projects, and the Scientific Valley is an umbrella project and includes a number of industrial partners playing the role creating demand for the results of the work of this center. Santa is another project, and it's about comfortable residential area, providing good quality life, attracting professionals from other regions and countries. Through these projects, we hope to develop technological entrepreneurship. Maybe you don't call it a research valley, but this is the place where people live. You have small businesses, large-scale companies, and who represents large-scale regional businesses. The basis is formed by the innovation center of the Ulyanovsk region. Which big company is among the participants? Among the industrial partners, we have residents. Which companies? Specific companies. Give me names of the companies and tell me why they came as participants. Let me help. Behind every big project, there are participants. Rosnano took the decision to develop wind energy generation. The big problem was power supply. Rosnano decided to invest, so there was human capital in Ulyanovsk region, which was inherited from before. It was related to plane building in the past. Another important catalyzer was that they created a unique nano center, which started developing competences. And after the decision was made to develop wind energy generation, they started developing it. And Ulyanovsk region today develops two clusters, aviation cluster, and recently the governor signed an agreement about creating an interregional cluster. And it's about business, where the business is the client, and then it creates fertile soil for implementing this kind of projects. And this year, Ulyanovsk, in a competition, in a tender, was one of the 6 who got money for developing a technopark in the amount up to 500 million rubles. The inherited industries and human resources were used through this mechanism. Yes, it is so. And the regional policy is focused on developing efficient industrial chains. It's not only about wind power generation, it's also about a factory producing from creating components for windmill turbines. 2 windmill parks were established. Education participates, and we've created the wind power generation competence educational center. The next question should be addressed to Kaliningrad business people. Do you see such a mechanism? Do you have a need in a big product that can be exported, for which brain should be involved, for which barriers should be eliminated if they are there?
Just a small remark regarding resources. I've just learned that Kaliningrad has no resources, has scarce resources. Oil, gas, amber. But the volume, it's about the volume. Okay, let it be so. And the colleague from Moscow, we have previously met, I think, regarding clusters. We have discussed. Yes, I do remember you. Your idea regarding the involvement of big companies. In fact, it's a disaster for innovative activities. I can argue, but please stick to the question. Big companies. It's quite essential. That's why I decided to say. Once I was invited for the Science and Business NGO. It's a round table. It's about science and business, and it involved mainly big businesses. And what they say is very simple. They say, guys, we need your ideas if it's not been patented anywhere, if it's not been discussed by anyone. Secondly, yes, it was directly said so. And of course, I asked them, if we do not discuss it, how can those ideas be generated? What will be the conducive environment for that? How can we face opponents? So we don't have the corresponding environment. Once I came across an interesting book about nanotechnologies. It's about experiments with descriptions. It's directly stated. I have read the introduction. I'm sorry, we are out of our discussion. It's about innovative technologies and the generation of ideas. And in the introduction, it says, I would like to thank the Ministry of Energy from the if we do not have this environment to protect innovators, researchers, to avoid stealing ideas, if researchers are deprived of ideas. I understand. Yes, my question was to Kaliningrad business representatives. Andrei Romanov, I'm from the Union of Industrialists and Agro Businesses. So it's about your question. can it be of any interest to our big businesses? My answer is definitely yes. I've made a few notes while we were listening to you. First of all, thank you, Mr. Andrei, for expressing his opinion. That was a key opinion which should provide the basis. So everything should be concentrated around the existing businesses and businesses which can come in the region. The first question was addressed to the government, regional government. How do you identify the key development activities? I respect the government, but this question is slightly incorrect. When the first edition of the law on the special economic zone was developed, we didn't know that such a major investor as Avtodor will come here. We received such an important player. We didn't expect them to come. Then we got the group of companies, Содружество, which is Kaliningrad's major exporter and operates as a transnational company. If in the law on the special economic zone we provided the framework, it doesn't mean that these projects would come out. It's important to create the environment and to let businesses smoothly go into. Regarding R&D centers, there were some amendments made to the law. They have been introduced since 2018. And it was about the engaging professionals to Kaliningrad without asking them to pass any exams or tests. We understand in the healthcare sector there can be a professor. He can come here, open a center. What is that? That's also intellectual property which you need to think about. The idea of an R&D center is correct, is right. They have nothing else to do but to cooperate. It could be a platform to exchange intellectual property between West and East. How do we do that? It's not that simple. We know that now we are not having the best economic situation, and not every entrepreneur can plan its activities for the next 5 years. But in any case, we are supposed to set up such centers. How to do that? I agree with my colleague. We should sit and discuss it with businesses. I'm sure we will get that added value. So I've just come from a construction site right now, and we are now creating a center in the field of dairy cattle farms, involving the German intellectual property. They believe in our market and they're ready to operate here. But I think at a later stage we can also use the Russian intellectual property. What are your key impediments? You mean from the point of view of a commercial undertaking? What are the biggest constraints you are facing when you develop? Well, it's a little bit outside the agenda. But of course, we can speak about our regulatory framework And secondly, the capacity, the potential of our domestic market. It's been said 140 million is our population, but if we are going to go abroad, export is a nice topic. Over the last 4 years, I've been involved in export activities. No one is waiting for us. But there is a wide range of issues to be addressed. You need to study before you enter an international market. You are to offer know-how and non-typical solutions that no one else has. That means to create a new economy in Kaliningrad, you need to identify priorities and not only involve human capital, but you also do, let's call it, reverse re-engineering of business process re-engineering and identify what is missing. And we also need the prerequisites and some structural conditions. Yes, we can enjoy foundations, grants, tax benefits, something else. At some stage we had our furniture sector, but now it's changing. So now we ship furniture not eastwards, but westwards. So let it grow on its own. They wouldn't grow on their own if the basic regulations were not provided on the special economic zone. It wouldn't happen so. Now we speak about the new conditions enabling businesses to develop. My feeling is that in Kaliningrad it's quite interesting now. Now we have the zero rate and simple conditions to enter the local market. Another thing, there is this October Island or Oktyabrsky Island, which is called an offshore zone, and it should provide some preconditions for development. And another thing, if we manage to switch off some regulatory burden, then we might eventually get a unique situation. What is important is demand. We need more demand. Maybe somebody else from the business sector can say something.
My name is Stefana Vlahovic. I am the chairperson of Produkty Pitania company, and you can easily guess what we do. And I also the chairperson of the Association of Foreign Investors in Kaliningrad. I was carefully listening, and it was correctly said that special economic zones have been opened all over Russia, and also research and development centers, and I visited several. And I've seen that money was invested in infrastructure with some nice tables, desks, and computers, some nice equipment, and everything is as clean as in a sterile operational room. A building can be built, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a flow of new technologies with business clapping and waiting for the results. This means we are not understanding the process. I studied in Stafford, and you will never, it's impossible to find a clean laboratory. You will find a mess in every laboratory, but it's boiling boiling with ideas and results of research. This is the first thing I wanted to say. Secondly, interesting conditions have been created for business in Kaliningrad. Imagine you have an aquarium, and every 3-4 weeks you put a ton of chlorine into the water. Which fish will be able to survive? I wouldn't have taken a risk of putting my finger in that water. It's hazardous administrative milieu which we have in Kaliningrad. So it's like regulatory guillotine. There is the federal agencies, and they can kill any business. Conditions of work shouldn't be changed. In Israel, they live a difficult life. They have all kinds of terrorism acts, but businesses are supported. They are not fought against. And if we say, start talking about Tesla, and the Tesla program was invented in Israel, including navigation maps and other products with a very high added value. They are investing energy, time in work, and not into interface with changing conditions, administrative conditions and rules. This is more important. Stability is more important than money and subsidies. Kind words. But we don't have it. We don't have this stability here. Thank you. It seems to me we will not be able to finalize our discussion without a question addressed to the educationalists. Okay, priorities have been chosen, barriers have been eliminated, businesses have created their chains. What about universities? Are they ready for that? Because they follow federal standards. They educate people which can work with receptions, with recipes described in 50s. And they are not talking about digitization of food production. Are universities ready to intervene, being part of research and development? Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting and for giving me the word. Today in the discussion, we are identifying the way to go and to develop. And extreme poles have been identified to work based on business orders, or to give total freedom to research for it to create in laboratories despite of the objectives, and then the idea will be implemented. In my opinion, we need both. We need both poles. And for that, in the region, we need to create those conditions. We need both clean, sterile laboratories and dirty laboratories focused on specific companies, large-scale companies, which we have, but in a small number in the region. We shouldn't forget about SMEs either, which also want to participate in the regional development, in developing machine and shipbuilding, and we should also support them. And secondly, if, as it was said by my friend, we need an idea, and we don't need as a must an order of the business, a contract of the business, because then there will be no creativity, then everything will be very practically applied. How should we arrange it? There are ways. You can always find ways. There shouldn't be extremes. So otherwise we will be either collective farmers or family farmers. We should use both mechanisms. We should combine things. And this is what have been said today. We started talking about human capital, and then we stopped talking about it. But what's important is what people do. And for me, human capital is not only it's not only workers. These are people working in the government, people working in the federal bodies, which today are a barrier. They are also a human capital, but a negative one. How should human capital be developed in all its complexity? This is not, we need more than 1 year, more than 5 years, decades to be able to answer those questions and to be able to achieve that. But we need to move in that direction for the problem of labor, for the problem of human resources to become in focus, to be in focus. Sometimes we have money, we have ideas, we have ways and business plans, but there are no people to implement those plans. This is the task of universities, to educate these people, to develop this human capital. Are universities ready? Speaking about human capital, their human capital, they are not ready. They don't have this human capital. Do they have the wish? Definitely yes. And we need, again, people who in universities would not set tasks of spending money or achieving certain indicators, performance indicators, or to earn money by university through research and development projects. But when they set tasks for every field of its activities, in every detail, just to provide good quality, then they will have money, then they will have business people as partners, and scientific activities will develop. We say we lack ideology in the country, and this has been admitted. But ideology in the region, in the university, should be present. Otherwise, we will not achieve anything. In our region, there are 2 serious leading universities which very closely, especially in the last years, started cooperating. So a miracle has happened. No, it's not a miracle, but the human capital, the government, and namely the governor, supported this cooperation. And we are ready. We are ready for this development. But the universities, do they have the necessary capacity? Not at the moment. Not yet. However, to export researchers from the outside, this is one way. To create our own ones is another way. We shouldn't use extremes. We shouldn't apply extremes. And the government, the regional government, plays the leading role. And what they do today, they support, they develop our partnership, they develop cooperation of our universities. But we also need to identify priorities. I'll just give you one example. In the Kaliningrad Technical University, 8 years ago, there were more than 30 research scientific schools, and each asked for money and other things, laboratories, ideas. In reality, we only have 4 or 5. And these 4 or 5 priorities should be supported both by the university, by the region, and by the country. And other fields, other directions should prove their relevance and their urgency and their capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important to admit that we need, but we cannot at the moment. And then it's important to refer to the regional government, but it's an ideology topic. Some universities can work. You can try to look for solutions, but for universities it's a long period. It takes 4 to 6 years. If a rector does not look in the long run, then he doesn't know what to do to train new staff. So as I can see, the region has some potential. That's what the governor has said today. Healthcare, modern materials, and other areas, we can say this can be called a priority, which can be used for 6-7 years. And secondly, there are entrepreneurs who know where to move. They seem to be satisfied with the taxation conditions, but they don't seem to be happy with the administrative interface. That's a second problem that can be addressed. So we need to do some homework before we hold our next forum. We need to think where we can improve products, or perhaps some new products can be created. And it was Stefano, he rightly said, after moving from priorities to the research programs, we can do what Mr. Artyom said, that 3 laboratory centers can be created. It doesn't mean GMP certified, but what was meant is the lack of certification, because it's going well in Kaliningrad.